Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 20th meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education. Superintendent, will you take the roll?
Yes, Ms. Shrostov. Here. Mr. Hoover.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Short. Mr. Hui.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
For the record, please note that Mr. Short is absent and Ms. Perez.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we're going to be going into closed session, but before we do, are there any public comments related to the closed session items?
No, Mr. Reed.
Okay, then the board will be going into closed session to discuss student matters, employee relations, conference with legal counsel, conference with real property negotiators, and personal matters. We will be back at 6 o'clock sharp. So we'll see you then. We're adjourned. All right, welcome back to the October 20th meeting of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education meeting. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comments during board meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Actually, I'll put a period there. We did not have any written comments today, so there was no written comments for the board to read. However, per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. Let's see, Superintendent, will you please take the roll?
Yes, Ms. Perez. Here. Ms. Shrivastava. Here. Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Hoover.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Short.
Here.
Mr. Hui.
Here.
All are here.
All right, thank you. All right, I will just indicate that we did not finish all of our closed session agenda items today before the board meeting, so we will be going back into closed session at the tail end of the meeting. Reporting out of closed session, Superintendent.
No action to report out at this time.
Okay, thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it. Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Clark, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, take the roll.
Yes, Ms. Perez. Aye. Ms. Shrivastava. Aye. Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Mr. Hoover.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Short.
Aye.
Mr. Hui.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Special presentations. I understand we do not have any, either staff or student presentations tonight.
That's correct.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 8, public comments. We will take public comments. I don't see any cards. Is there anyone online that?
No.
No. It appears that we have no public comment today. All right, moving on to agenda item 9, report of district organizations. We'll start with the Student Advisory Board.
No report tonight other than our next SAB meeting will be on November 2nd, 2022.
Thank you. California School Employees Association.
Good evening, President Reed, board members, and Dr. Collegian. First, thank you for the recent raise. It helps us provide for our families and deal with the rising cost of living. Second, as you are aware, the labor shortage continues, and it may be here with us for quite a while. If our goal is to retain the best and attract the best classified employees, we need to stay competitive. And in some cases, get more competitive. Two positions that come to mind are bus drivers and paraeducators. We need to guarantee those positions at least 6 hours per day. Benefits like health insurance are tied to the set number of hours per day. Let's get more competitive by guaranteeing these positions and possibly some others at least 6 hours per day. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, you had indicated school bus drivers, and what was the other?
Paraeducators, most of them have less than 6 hours per day on their regular hours. There are other positions where we could look at that as well, but those are the two that jump out.
Do you by chance know what the average hours for school bus drivers and paraeducators are? If you don't, that's fine, we can look it up.
Most school bus drivers do have more than 6 hours. But if we're really trying to attract and retain, I think we need to look at least getting that minimum for them. As far as paraeducators, I believe the most common, it used to be 6 hours was pretty common. It seems like the new hires are 5.75 or some at 5.5 or some at 3.9. Okay. So I think we need to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next is the Folsom Cordova Education Association. I think I saw Deb. Oh, welcome, Deb.
Good evening, Dr. Koligian, President Reed, and board trustees. Tonight, I want to reflect on community schools and meeting the social emotional needs of our students. First, FCUSD has begun the path to meet the needs of the whole child through supporting the family. FCEA is excited to be included in the conversation and decision-making along with other stakeholders. We are hopeful our schools will continue to attract support systems for success. We acknowledge the efforts of the board, administration, staff, parents, and business partners who are thinking out of the box to fill the support systems needed through the classroom, school, and community. As we journey together in our efforts, FCEA also wants to acknowledge the work of NEA and CTA, who have successfully implemented community schools throughout the nation for the past 10 years. We appreciate our CTA staff representative, Emma Urbach, and our own experts, Carla Gaiman-Davis and Kate Hazarian, in the willingness to share their expertise and resources, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, or as we have done other unknowns, build the plane as we fly it. We are excited to go through the journey toward meeting the needs of the whole child that we serve. In addition, I want to celebrate a couple of ways that our educators are constantly checking in with students, not only on academics, but on social emotional needs. One such educator I ran across has implemented a check-in system with her students. She has found giving students the ability to make decisions is vital to empowering them to be their best advocate. In class, she builds a safe environment where trust is earned first. Once trust is established, she allows students to make their own decisions through giving them choices. In order to help an upset student's emotional well-being through choice, the following question is asked. Do you want to vent, problem solve, or would you like a supportive space to be silent? Students' shoulders relax through choice and autonomy. For younger students, many of the teachers check in by asking students how they are feeling as they enter the classroom by pointing to a happy face if they're feeling good, a resting face if okay, and a sad face if they're troubled or sad. There are many ways to give students the ability to choose and voice their needs. Teachers and educators practice many ways to make connections, build trust, and help the needs of the whole child. FCEA wants to celebrate all educators that take the time to make these connections with their students and share awesome practices with others to build a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have the Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Good evening, President Board, Dr. Kaligian, and members of the board. Tonight's report will highlight the work of Kate Hazarian, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Support Services. Kate was a presenter at the recent California PBIS conference, and during her session titled, Actually, It Is Science, Creating the Conditions for Change, Kate supported educators from all over the state to solve problems and dilemmas through curiosity, implementation science, and continuous best practices. We're incredibly grateful to have such a positive and supportive force here in FCUSD. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have the District English Learner Advisory Committee.
Good evening, President Reeve, members of the board, and Dr. Kaligian, Superintendent, and my esteemed colleagues. I do have a brief update. We had a DLAC meeting this week, Tuesday, specifically in person at Cordova Lane. It was wonderful not only to see our parents, but also staff supporting the English Learner Advisory Committee. And I'm pleased to also announce that we had Rocio Perez present in our meeting. We held elections for new officers. Our new slate of officers are Ana Silvia Pimentel. She is a parent at Peter J. Shields, and you have seen her before. She was our former secretary. Our vice president is Gabriela Robles, and she is a parent at Sutter Middle School as well as at Riverview Elementary. And lastly, Liliana Flores, who is from Rancho Cordova Elementary School, is our secretary. At a future date, I'd like to have them here so that you can see them in person. But I know that we look forward to see them on the 29th at our Parent Summit. I wanted to finish my presentation by letting you know a couple of the topics that were discussed at Tuesday's DLAC meeting. And one is a survey that we conduct of all parents and including some staff, where we take a look at the needs, the successes, the connections that students have in school, the areas of interest that parents may have. And through that needs assessment, which is directed at English learner parents, also inclusive of Title I parents, and really, frankly, all parents in our district. But we have a way of sorting that information by site. And really that helps us gather that needs assessment that parents have throughout the year as they look at the services that we provide for students. So parents are always interested in those questions and helping shape what we ask in the survey. So you'll hear more about it because that survey will be open through December 9th. Lastly, we're all looking forward to seeing the Parent Summit on October 29th. Thank you.
Elena, real quick, what time is that Parent Summit? Because I have 10 o'clock.
Parent Summit start at 8:30. We have parents that are dropping kids off wherever they need to, so there's a little trickle-in factor. But we're going to get started, do an opening, and then we're going to actually turn it over to our community schools. Carla will be present. We'll have a gentleman by the name of Dr. Cruz, Jorge Cruz, will be sharing successes and experiences as it relates to the process of community schools, the development, the engagement. It'll be really a jam-packed Parent Summit. We start at 8:30 and we end at 11:30. And we do also offer a lunch because we know it's a long day and we keep our parents engaged and busy.
Okay, thank you.
Lastly, I do want to say we do provide childcare for children at that setting. We call it play care.
Okay. Superintendent, is it possible to get a calendar invite to the board just in case?
I believe,
I will definitely be there, but.
Yeah, I believe we sent out, but I will double confirm that the invitations go to the board and cabinet as well as our members. We should be seeing an email with the flyers attached as well as on the webpage. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I mean, I have it on my calendar, but I have it for 10 o'clock. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
You know. And that
Welcome to come at 10. It is 3 hours, so I would just say come and join at any time, all day, part of the day. It'd be great to see you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, that finishes our reports of district organizations, takes us to agenda consent. When I received the motion, we do need to pull agenda item J because we did not review personal items in closed session first.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to pull item J from the agenda consent.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Clark, second by Mr. Hoover. Superintendent, take the roll, please.
Yes. Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hoover?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Short?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you very much. And we will cover J in closed session, and when we come back out of closed session at the end of the meeting, we will approve that separately. All right, agenda item 11, it's a public hearing, so. All right, we're entering into a public hearing regarding the draft preliminary environmental assessment for the Alder Creek Elementary School construction project. Superintendent.
Yes, this is part of the process as we are getting ready to construct our second elementary school, Alder Creek Elementary School. And in accordance with Ed Code and the health codes, safety codes, part of the process is to prepare this preliminary environmental assessment. And we're required to publish the notice of the PEA, and this is the next step before the Department of Toxic Substances Control finishes their analysis. And we have to be able to leave this public hearing period open for a period of 30 days. So it was opened on September 30th, closes October 30th, and as of October 10th, we've had no public comments received so far. But it is required that we also do it during a public board meeting. The Ed Code requires that school projects receiving state funding, naturally occurring hazardous materials must be addressed through this process. And the presence of elevated concentrations of arsenic and trace concentrations of mercury triggered the requirement for the completion of the PEA. So if you're wondering why, that's the reason why. But again, it's procedural. The findings that we have, the initial findings or draft findings indicate that any releases of hazardous materials, petroleum products, or evidence of environmental conditions do not propose a threat to public health and environment. So with that being said, once we take any comments from the public tonight, then DTSC can finish their process of the review.
All right, thank you. And I noticed that we don't have a further agenda item on this item for discussion for the board. So I will entertain questions from the board at this juncture if there are any. No? All right. Is there any public comment? None in person, any online? No, Mr. Reed. None online. All right, back to the board unless there's anything.
Shall we close the public
We
hearing?
will close the public hearing.
And then take the action?
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We are closed the public hearing. Superintendent, I didn't see anything that would require an action on this item tonight.
It's just a,
Correct?
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, all right. All right, moving on to agenda item 12, discussion action. Approve contract with Creative Bus Sales and cancellation of contract with E-Lion Bus Sales. Superintendent.
Yes, we're actually doing two things with this discussion action item. Our staff is going to be providing a summary for the board on our current state of transportation and recommendations for next step related to the purchase of electric buses for the fleet. This is also bringing in a request from the board from an earlier meeting to talk about our diesel fleet as well as the new electric fleet. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Martin, and I also want to thank Mr. Snow for being here as well, our Director of Transportation.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, Director Snow is here this evening to answer any specific questions you have. And we just have a quick summary, give you an update of where we are with the transportation department, some of the staffing concerns, and also we want to spend a few minutes talking about electric buses and our contracts with our vendors on that. So just some quick facts here. We've shared this information with the board in the past, but I just wanted to share again about over 800,000 miles that we do home-to-school transportation annually, and right now we have about 1,700 riders, which is down from our historical highs. But part of that is due to the fact that we are not able to offer transportation runs as many as we have done in the past. Currently, the fleet is 83 diesel buses. Our plan was originally to replace with 7 electric buses, but we're going to be bringing a proposal due to timing of funding, some other activities to bring that down to 4, but we're continuing to look at that. You can also see the information about the size of our buses. You can see that the majority of our buses are actually smaller size buses that we use for special education services. Staffing, I know, is a common question, and there has been some communication from the public with regards to some of the transportation routes and information with regards to that. So we just wanted to share where we are. As of October 10th, we're short 14 driving positions. Some of those are not route drivers, but they're part of our floating sub-pool that we have. So that's a combination of both total. Some of the impacts due to the shortfall of drivers, one big one is the length of time that some of our routes have for some of our students. You can see we have about 15 to 20 riders who have routes that exceed 60 minutes one way, which we feel is excessive. Additionally, our longest single rider is about an hour and 20 minutes one way. So they're looking at almost over 2.5 hours on the bus during the day, which is an extended period of time, right? We want to get those down. Additionally, we have at all 3 of our comprehensive high schools, we have at least one route, if not more, up to 2, where we have to drop off students earlier than the normal drop-off time. Normally, we try to drop off around 10 minutes before the bell, and we're dropping these students up to 40 minutes off before the bell starts. And then in the afternoon, we normally try to pick up right when the bell is at the end of the school day, and the students are having to wait up to 20 minutes before we can pick them up. Our transportation office staff, which would be our dispatchers, our clerks, and some of those support folks, anybody who has more or less a license to drive a bus, have been having to drive consistently every day. Even with, you have to realize we have 14 positions open, but additionally we have people absent due to being sick or COVID or whatever the case may be. And so we constantly have to fill with our existing office staff, meaning office work either getting postponed or not done, or it takes an extended period of time to get through all the processes that we have. We are limiting the ability to offer transportation outside of home to school for field trips and sports activities. Some of the things that the team has done is included shuttling service. So if we have a large group, we'll take one group down, drop them off, then the bus goes back, picks up the rest of the team, and then takes it back down. So we do some of those things. Or we have referred folks out to charter services, which is obviously very costly. And also, to be honest, that those are hard to come by as well, just because the marketplace for bus drivers in general is pretty needy in this time for drivers. So we don't offer any daily transportation riding tickets at this point. We have historically allowed students to buy individual tickets, but because we have to always guarantee an open spot with those, we're not offering that at this point because we are at capacity with our existing routes. So we don't have the ability to offer single riders. You more or less have to buy a full pass to guarantee a spot. We also, because of the length of the routes and some of those pieces, we have been doing refunds, which historically we normally do not do that, but we trying to respect and honor the fact that people aren't happy with the length of time on the bus, which we understand. And so just within the last 30 days, we had about 15 refunds. So, and that's not normally the practice. So just wanted to kind of give you guys an update of the impact of the driver shortage. So any questions on that or anything that Director Snow can share?
A couple questions.
Sure.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Yeah, please.
We're down 14 drivers. How many drivers total do we have?
Jim, you want to come up to the...
We currently have about 50 drivers total right now, counting the ones that we have in training that are driving van routes. Okay. So the additional 14 would be to unpack some of these issues and get the students a more reasonable service level.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. One would be, you mentioned the passes. How much are the passes for it sounds like it's only for the year, not necessarily for the day. What would that cost family?
360 round trip or 180 one way. Okay. For the year.
And then I know it's not an ideal option, but I just want to confirm students in our district in Sacramento County are able to ride regional transit for free. Is that correct?
I believe they are, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we actually have passes that we send out to all the sites that students can ride on RT for free. Yes.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. You can hang out, Jim.
Any other board members?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does the problem seem to be concentrated in either Folsom or Rancho? Is it pretty consistent across the district?
What do you mean, just the transportation shortfall?
Yeah, or just related to the shortage and the students having to take really long bus trips?
It's spread out throughout the whole district, yeah.
Thank you.
And so on this next page, we just wanted to speak to some of the things we've done to try to improve recruitment of bus drivers. The starting pay now is up over $21, $21.78 to $26.48 is the starting range for our bus drivers now. We do have that, we're calling it a hiring bonus related to the one-time payment that we agreed to this year, which new employees can access if they're hired before our first payment in December. We're offering a full training class every other month. You can see here last class we had 5 participants who actually completed it, passed the written exam, and then now they're doing the behind the wheel training. And we actually use our candidates actively. And you want to speak to that, kind of what we do with them and how they're supporting the team?
Sure. So currently, we're shorthanded in our bus aides. We're also shorthanded in the driving staff, of course. So as these trainees are going through the process, we're not available to train them in the morning and the afternoon when home to school's going on because our trainers and myself were out driving as well. So we are utilizing some of them that are licensed and they've gone through all of the classroom portion. They drive white vans and transport smaller runs of students that we transport to neighboring districts, for example. So that's been helpful. It gets them in the paid status, gets them earning some money to be able to go through the training program. And then we use them as bus aides as well, the ones that are still waiting to complete that process.
And just to recognize, the previous class, we had 2 participants who we ended up hiring. And I believe the 32 applications we got in this class was significantly more than the previous class.
Yeah, the applicant base has been growing each time, so we're starting to see a little bit relief and a little bit larger classes. The quality of the applicants has also increased, so more people getting finished to the end, so.
So we're definitely seeing some improvement on that. We also try to do activities. Jim is actually very good about reaching out. He actually runs the transportation program for the International Marathon, and so we're able to get our drivers additional pay by these other activities outside of the regular workday, which obviously helps also with their bottom line and helps recruit the team too. So just want to recognize that. That's a big event. I think, how many districts do provide transportation service under that one?
It's going to be about 15 districts this year, 200 yellow school buses, plus RT and some charter buses. So
really impressive, some of the outreach programs we do with our program. So you can see a whole list of different recruitment methods. We've talked about the fact that we park the buses. We have information on the side of our other district vehicles, kind of recruiting for transportation, as well as you can see all the list of different places that we put out information. We're also hopefully getting backfilled with our mechanic positions. We've had several openings for quite a while there. And at this point, we've got all but one, I think, filled right at this
I have a recommendation going up tomorrow.
There we go. So we're definitely seeing progress on that. We still have a way to go, but a lot of these steps have done a big piece of it. So, and I would also share that Jim and his team, they're very good advocates for transportation. They reach out anytime they can. I also know within the kind of the transportation world, people look very highly upon our department, and people are interested in coming to Folsom Cordova. So I just want to recognize that as well. So where we are with our current electric buses is, if you do guys remember, we were originally supposed to already have buses quite a while ago. The original application was for 7 electric buses with a vendor called Lion. Lion's out of Canada. And that was back in November 2020 that the board actually approved this action. The total cost was going to be about $2.7 million, but because of grant funding, our cost was only going to be about $300,000. Just so you know, one electric bus is about $400,000 on average. It was a combination of primarily 2 funding sources. One we call HVIP, and the other one was through the Air Quality Board. Unfortunately, the HVIP allocation of funding expired, and that was due to the fact that they extended it several times, but ultimately Lion was unable to provide the buses. And at this point, we don't have definitive timeline of when Lion can provide the buses to us. They were out of Canada, as I shared, and then they started, they decided to open up a factory in the United States.
Yes.
Right? And when they did that, they haven't even completed that factory at this point. So the factory is supposed to be done around April, I believe. And then once the factory's up, then they can start production, but they have not given us a timeline of when we would see a bus and where we are in the production line. So there is a lot of question of the realistic ability for Lion to get us buses anytime in the next year and a half or so. Additionally, the Air Quality Board, which is the other half of the funding that we were receiving, is recommending that we cancel our contracts with Lion because they have to make sure that their portion of the funding can get out to us within a required timeline. Because, as you know, a lot of these grants that come through Air Quality Boards are actually coming from the federal government, other agencies, and so they have timelines that they have to get that money out. And so they're asking us to move forward. Because we've lost the HFIP, which is about $1 million of the funding, we won't be able to have the same buying power that we originally would have had. But the Air Quality Board is willing to take what was going to be spread out over 7 buses and allow us to allocate it over 4 buses so that our actual out-of-pocket cost doesn't increase significantly, which is at least the best of what we can get out of this particular situation, right? So what would end up happening out of this is we'd be looking at purchasing 4 buses using the Air Quality Board funding, and it would actually lower our district contribution, which would be about $250,000 versus $300,000. But of course, we're only getting 4 buses, not 7. So on a per bus level, we are putting more out pocket. But we still, compared to 1 bus, which would cost $400,000, we're getting 4 buses, electric buses. Additionally, the timeline that we think we could potentially get the buses is closer to about 6 to 8 months versus an unknown date, year and a half plus potentially. So where we are beyond that is, I'm sure you've heard about a lot of electric bus conversations. One of the biggest ones is at the state level. The state budget approved significant, what they called green school bus program. They allocated over $1 billion to the State Air Resource Board that will realistically trickle down to the local board, then that will then put into grants for us to apply for. None of those details are out yet. So we don't know the timelines, we don't know the funding, we don't know how that's going to work. Additionally, there was money allocated to the California Energy Commission for infrastructure on the infrastructure side, because that's the other big piece. Just so you guys know, our infrastructure project, we received grant funding as well for that portion. And we're hoping that over the winter, we're going to have that installed. So we'll have all the infrastructure in place, and then we'll be ready to go when our buses roll out. So the timeline for the green grant program through the state has not been given at this point. They did, some of the language said it would be serving a higher percentage of unduplicated pupils. We know we average on the lower side because of our averaging, so we don't know how many grants we potentially will be able to access, but they'll be replacing out older internal combustion buses, which we'll have some, since we had 3 of the 7 that we were going to replace. We'll still have those 3 that will probably qualify. So if not more, we have several other ones. So that's just a quick summary. So what coming back to the board on this is, what we're asking is to go ahead and cancel the contract with Lion, go ahead and do this new contract, go ahead and get us moving so we can get signed and get in line for the buses. Do you want to speak to anything more about the international buses? I know you've taken a look at them and you want to share some information about them.
Sure. So Lion Bus, we originally went with them. They were kind of the biggest player in the electric bus field at the time. But the bus that they put out it's about 40 feet long, and we needed the buses to get into courts and turns, so it didn't work for us. They came out with the prototype for the shorter bus, which is what we ordered. So with these 4 buses, they're actually larger than the 7 we were going to order. They're kind of an in-between bus. We can get into most of our courts, but they also do have a larger capacity, nearly double. So the international bus itself has been a solid producer of trucks and light bus for decades. So we're hopeful and optimistic that the buses are going to be on time and performing as they should.
And these are all going to be set up for special education and transportation, so they'll have the wheelchair lifts on them, and they have, what's the seating called?
So they have track flooring where we can just remove seats and add more spaces for wheelchair students, or reverse that anytime we want. It's like a quick change system in the floor. So. very versatile.
President Reed, I just have one question.
Yes.
With the increased volume of students we can put in, he said about twice as many students. Are we able to utilize the extra students if we're already having trouble keeping students on the bus for less than an hour?
So we do have a special segment of our routes where we really need to give students some room. So it does afford us that ability to kind of keep students to where they have a space to themselves. So it is helpful. We do have some 35-foot buses that we use specifically for that. They'll definitely have a place for us, for sure.
It sounds like, we might not actually increase the amount of students we're transporting. We just will be able to utilize the buses in a different way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Short?
With even it being short on 4 versus 7, are we still planning on getting more over a period of time so we can have more routes with shorter time durations?
Yeah, we have sufficient buses to do that. We just need drivers to do the routes. I think the electric buses is, whenever there's an application process, we just recently applied for 5 buses. I think I shared.
Okay.
We did not end up getting that application approved because we were not considered rural enough for the grant for that one.
Okay,
So, yeah.
all right. Yeah, because that seems to be the complaint is the duration right now.
One of the things we're facing with the electric buses is currently it's a replacement program. Our fleet is not that old. We have a nice fleet. It's been kept up nicely. So anything 2007 and newer doesn't meet that qualification. That's why we originally did the 7. Now we're going to get to keep 3 of those, so we'll immediately be reapplying when something opens up. But also, I attend every board meeting with the Air Board, and we keep all of the directors are saying it's time to start thinking about, addition. Because otherwise the money's just going to sit there, and they're starting to see that they're not getting enough applications for replacement.
Right, that is something we have to look at long-term as we grow as a district. If we continue to have to increase our fleet, we would have, if you buy an electric bus, it's $400,000 versus a conventional diesel, which would be maybe $125,000, $150,000. And so you can see the price difference for us, and if there's no grant funding, the incentive for us to go electric with those is very hard to do because we can get 2 buses for 1, if not, a better price point for us. So that's why Jim is advocating with his group about allowing us not only for replacement, you obviously want to get the older polluting buses off the road first, but the ability as fleets grow, we want to be able to have access to new buses that way. So we're not even buying diesel. However, we do share that we do use the biodiesel, right? Renewable diesel, yeah. That's right. Which I think we've shared before is a more efficient use of vegetable oil and other refined products, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it cuts the emissions from 40 to 90% compared to a regular diesel. So we are doing some green energy through that process. So, or at least not green energy, but at least some pollution savings. How's that?
I would assume the cost of electric buses will come down as production increases. Is that?
There's a lot of players in the game right now. There's a lot of manufacturers coming out with buses. So far, I think as long as there's funding available, and we're not forced to buy them out of pocket, I think the market's we probably won't see a decrease until all that funding dries up.
There might be more competition with it, and the timelines hopefully would improve. But I think we had shared on a previous presentation that it lines up over the lifespans. I think it was either 10 or 15 years. What you see is your overall cost evens out because even though you save on fuel and oil and maintenance, you make it up for in that initial capital cost. So I think they've worked out a model that they know it costs the district about the same over the life of the bus. And so unless somebody comes in and undercuts everybody else in the transportation market, that would be the only thing that would lower the price. You know how that works. So.
Okay, thank you.
They will charge what they can get.
Okay. Any final comments?
I have a question.
Yes. Board Member Rustova?
I know there was a public comment a few weeks ago about a student having to sit on the floor of a vehicle. Do we have any more information about that situation? Is that something that we're working to not have happen?
That particular one, the student was on the floor before the bus moved. When the driver saw it, he had him get up in a seat. There was a seat there. The student just didn't want to sit in that particular seat.
Okay.
But yeah, they have a capacity. They're not allowed to move the bus if the kids are not in the seat.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and we also have cameras on all of our buses. We can always go back and track if there's any issues or concerns. But yeah, we have a very strict prescribed safety, and we wouldn't allow transportation to exceed the allowable seat limit.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Board Member Short.
Just to follow on the overall cost analysis, with the electric vehicles, the mechanics, you have diesel mechanics. Do we have electric motor bus mechanics out there that even are available to hire? Seems like there'd be a shortage of that too.
It would be the same mechanics. They would pivot. In fact, we already had one training set up. It ended up getting canceled because the instructor was ill. But there's routinely these manufacturers, they put on free training for for that. And the nice thing about it is most everything's done over the air by the manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
Because it's all software stuff. So the actual mechanical part of it is very limited.
Yeah. So you will train our existing bus drivers to be certified in that area. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Any other questions? All right. That was, actually, that was an action item.
That was an action.
Yeah, so any public comments? None in person, any online? No, Mr. Reed. All right, back to the board. Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
All right, a motion by Mr.
Second.
Hoover, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, will you take the roll?
Yes, Ms. Perez?
Aye.
Ms. Srivastava?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hoover?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Short?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, that moves us to agenda. Actually.
Mr. President, yes, if I may, I do want to recognize Ms. Lauren Pryor to our meeting, and with board's consensus, would like to, I believe that she does have a public comment, would like to invite her to the podium.
So reopen public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Public comments, public comments. Any objections?
No.
All right. Actually, will you put 4 minutes on the clock there?
Sure. Oops.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's so good to be back. I apologize for my long absence, but Elk Grove has more problems than you do. And I apologize for my tardiness. Again, I drove all the way from Elk Grove to be here with you tonight. So thank you for the privilege of allowing me to speak before you. I wanted to bring up a couple of things. The first one has to do with the incident that happened at Vista. I want you to know that we were very concerned about the fact that the board did not release this statement immediately. I understand that you want to get all the facts and you also want to make sure you're doing your due diligence, but it takes 0 days to be a human being. It takes 0 days to say, we understand that something happened on our watch. We are concerned as you are, and we promise we will get to the bottom of it. That's all we want to see as a community. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be validated. We want to be heard. And the students deserve that much, and their families deserve that much. I want to acknowledge your superintendent, also Scott and Jim, who we met with last week. They did answer my email immediately. I emailed from DC and told them I would be back. And they made sure to get me in on their calendar, and we had a wonderful conversation. I was greeted with a statement when I stepped in the door. They had a copy ready for me, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that because they did not have to do that. They did not have to respond right away, and they took the time to do that. So I wanted to publicly acknowledge that they did respond to me immediately. We have some work to do, though. And I want to make myself and my team, who is youth mental health first aid trained, and also we will be going through the training of youth peer mentor program counseling that is going to help students deal with their frustrations and emotions. I want to offer that to you as a resource. Now, to just change subjects, because I did receive the video of your teacher at Cordova. I want to tell you that culturally speaking, he is not speaking any different than my uncle, my father, or anybody else would speak. Did he speak unprofessionally? Absolutely. I want to know, and I'm wondering if someone can provide me a number of how many students with IEPs were in that class. Is that a throwaway class? What we are seeing in districts is that they tend to put the students who are the most difficult to deal with the teachers of color and most often Black teachers. And so I want to make sure that we did not set this teacher up to take a fall because he was frustrated at the misbehavior of students in the class. Also, what I can tell you is that there have been families who have contacted our office. My understanding is this is one of your great teachers, that he is loved on that campus, that he is the cool one. He is the one whose rooms they go into to hang out often. He is the only Black teacher on that campus, I am told. So before we make rash decisions, I believe that this teacher should be heard out and that we should respond in kind. If there is a restorative conversation that needs to happen, please use me. I believe in accountability across the board, whether it's your students or your teachers. I don't believe anybody needs to talk in the way that I heard on that video, but I do understand the frustration, and I understand that our children are dealing with a lot, and sometimes they act a fool in class. And so I want to make myself available to you if you would allow me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, before we close public hearing, since I did reopen it, is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I will. I don't think I need 4 minutes. I usually have my public comment written. My name is Lisa Stanley. I am with Black Youth Leadership Project as well. And like Lorraine said, the meeting last week was very refreshing to hear. We had a good dialogue and back and forth of how we can come to some resolutions in our district, in your district, and that you were moving forward in a positive way. So we appreciate that. As far as this teacher, you know, I was just on a 3-hour call yesterday morning, and then a few days before that, where the teachers are given grace, right? They're using the N-word in a class lesson and given grace. And I want that same level of respect and grace given to this teacher, especially with the love and the care that we see across other districts, because one Black male teacher, the representation, right? And it is so important that he is in this classroom. And yeah, that's what I want to say. I really want you guys to give that same grace that you would with a white teacher doing something in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments online?
No, Mr. Reed.
Okay. All right. So back to the agenda. Let's see. It looks like we are up to item 13, discussion. Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2022 Fall Vital Signs Data Report. Superintendent.
Yes, our team is very excited to be presenting to the board our first of 3 reports for the 22-23 school year based on our vital signs data, which will be including our standardized tests, our CASP, ELA, and math, the CAST test, the LPAC. It also includes data on attendance, and we've been talking about our attendance campaign, so you'll see results of that for the first few months. Our suspension data and our graduation data. And I want to thank the collaboration of the team and actually all of our leadership team at sites too, because we all have this common focus right now. But Dr. Huber, Angie Carlomagno, Scott Meyer, Kate Hazarian, Dr. Ayana Peace, and Kay Malhi-Huser are all part of this presentation, and I want to thank them as well. So Dr. Huber, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good evening, President Reed, Dr. Collegian, members of the board. Also, I'd just like to add that Pam Oyen is also part of that team and was a big part of this presentation. So as you know, Folsom Cordova Unified School District really has shifted the last few years in terms of coming together to really be thoughtful and purposeful in terms of the use of data, especially data around making decisions. And so we want to share with you kind of where we are in that journey and also give you somewhat of a preview of things to come throughout the year and actually for years coming, because we don't plan on getting off of this particular path. Data will be guiding us till we're not here anymore, probably. So with that, we'll get going. First, just really quickly, in terms of the way we use data, because data can be used in many ways, but we're very purposeful in the fact that the way we use data is to inform us. It really is, we really are trying to be purposeful and use this as, if you will, a flashlight. It's the means for us to see what is happening with student success, whether it's academics, whether it's social emotional learning, you name it. There are different ways of measuring how successful we are being in any given arena. But the data is really important to use as a way of guiding us and helping support initiatives for improvement. And so we really want to be purposeful in that regard. A characteristic, I just want to read one of the little quotes up here. A characteristic of good data is its potential to help educators and staff make good decisions about student learning and help guide and direct teaching. What we don't want to use is data in a way that either puts up defenses, is used in terms of shaming students or teachers or parents, because that's just not the purpose of what we're trying to do. Just as a refresher really quickly, as you all know, we really went all in about 4 years ago, 5 years ago on the PLC process. And the PLC process really boils down to 4 specific questions that we're asking all of our sites to use all the time in their meetings when they're looking at what's happening with students. And it seems simplistic, but it's actually pretty amazing in terms of how important it is of keeping all of our educators and our students on the same page. And so those questions are, what do we want our students to learn? And this obviously refers to both state standards and then essential standards that teachers and administrators agree to. How will we know if they've learned it? So this is referring to how are we going to assess student learning, especially student learning in the moment, student learning that we can impact if a student is struggling or is not getting the material. How do we intervene in that rather than assessment used to assign a grade? What will we do if they didn't learn it? That's now where we're talking about our interventions in terms of how are we going to help those students. But then also at the same time, some of the students who come to the table and they already know it. So how do we enrich? So in terms of how our sites are using data to inform instruction, we use regular formative assessments to drive reteaching. Again, formative assessments are those assessments used within the classroom lesson. A lot of times formative assessments, the students don't even know they're being assessed because the material is simply there to give teachers information on how well the student is either understanding the concept or is acquiring the skill. As you know, in our elementary schools, we use every student by name, and this individually focuses all the teachers and administrators, the parents, around what each student needs individually in terms of their success. And then finally, summative data is those are the assessments most parents and folks outside of the realm of education are most used to, because the summative assessments are the end. That's the end of the lesson or the end of the unit, and this is what is the students receiving for a grade. And in terms of student supports, we have a multitude of different measures that are helping us really start to track how kids are doing. Of course, you're very familiar with A2A, the attendance data program that we use now, the suspension data that we're pulling now from PowerSchool. We also have contracted with Panorama so that we are now surveying students 3 times a year in terms of how things are going in terms of their social emotional learning. Second Step and BASE education are 2 programs that we're using to help students in terms of social emotion, self-management, interacting with peers, etc. And then, of course, what we're probably most used to as well is the review of the California Healthy Kids Survey that is now yearly. Also, just really quickly to recap, COVID definitely had an impact on where we are currently and also kind of some of the different things that we're dealing with now at our school sites in terms of both students and with faculty, in terms of meeting what the students need. This year's CASP administration was the first time that 3rd graders and 5th graders in elementary schools took the assessment. We also, just as a reminder, something we're very proud of, we were the only Sacramento County district to return to in-person instruction in the fall of 2020. We really also want to acknowledge the hard work our parents did. They did the best job they could in those tough situations when students were at home and, we all jumped in feet first in terms of that distance learning. I'm sure our 2 student board members could speak to what that experience was like. Also, we want to call out the fact that obviously our students that come from low-income situations were the ones that were most impacted by the whole pandemic and moving to remote learning. We know for a fact that students, for the vast majority of students do best in a classroom with a skilled teacher. There's just no doubt about it. Also, we do want to call out the fact that our Title I schools, our skilled teachers in our Title I schools are having a dramatic impact on our kids. And so really, as a whole district, we're coming together to kind of use data and be purposeful around data in a way that I don't think our district ever has in its history before. And we're really excited with where this is taking us. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Malhai. This one? Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I think I need to wear my glasses. All right, so I'm going to provide you with an overview of student performance. Specifically, we'll take a look at 18-19 and 2021-22 CASP performance, which is taken by all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11, and 18-19 and 21-22 LPAC results. And this test is taken by all English learner students, K-12, and we will take a look at that as well. Now, when I talk about CASP, I will be talking about students who have met or exceeded standards. When I talk about LPAC, we are looking at students who have demonstrated English skills that are well developed. The source of this information is the California Department of Education embargoed preview. And there is a detailed data analysis embedded in this slide. So when you look at this slide, you can see CASP performance from 18-19 in ELA, math, CAST, which is science, and as a general trend, you see that ELA and math, we did go down by 3% in ELA, 3% in math, and then CAST, there was an increase of 1% from 44 to 45%, and that exam is taken by students in grades 5, 8, and high school. For LPAC, there was a 2% decline from 18-19. Now let's take a look at CASP ELA, just look at an overview of some general trends. This 3% decline did trickle down into most of our student groups, grades and schools. I also have seen that there is a decline in surrounding districts, and the decline for our males was greater than for females, 4% compared to 2%. On a positive note, our English learners, they showed a 2% increase, but there was a 6% decline for our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, as well as for our Black or African American students. For math, we're seeing the same trend again. That 3% decline trickled down to our groups, our grades, and our schools. Also, there was a decline in surrounding districts. We had a reverse here for performance for males versus females. The decline for females was greater than for males, 4% compared to 2%. Grade 6 did maintain performance when compared to 18-19, and I believe they were 47% meeting or exceeding standards. Our students with disabilities had a 1% increase, and there was a decline for our socioeconomically disadvantaged students of 6% and 5% for our Black or African American students. Now let's take a look at the 21-22 LPAC summative performance. And what I'm reporting on is level 4, or students who demonstrated well-developed English skills. Our K-12 English learners take part in a battery of assessments that assess their listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. And overall, we scored a 15.55%, or rounded up to 16%. And that overall score is broken down into two composite scores. The oral language, where 28% demonstrated level 4 or were well developed, and 8% were well developed in written language. You break that down again to individual domains. In listening, we had 24% of our students demonstrating well-developed English skills, 39% in speaking, and for the written language, it was considerably lower at 12% for reading and 14% for writing. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Mr. Meyer.
All right, I just kind of wanted to reiterate Dr. Huber when he said we are looking at data completely different than we ever have. But I also want to be honest, and we even if we don't like the data, we still have to look in the mirror and address that. And so when we're looking at a lot of data, and we're dumping a lot of data on you right now, I challenge you to not think of these as large numbers, but think of these as individual students. As someone who does work day in, day out with families and students who are in tough situations, it is heavy. And it's real easy to look at this data just as a macro, but my challenge would be to look at these as individual students and don't get lost in large numbers, because we kind of diving into attendance when I talked a few months ago about the disproportionality with attendance, which I'm very open. I believe it's students voting with their cheeks in the seats. And we talk about disproportionality often with suspension, but our disproportionality has been really bad with our attendance with a lot of our student groups, specifically our special education, our foster youth, our Black students. And we need to keep saying that until we improve. The good news is last year, at the end of the year, which is not optimal, in April and May, and I know Board Member Short, Board Member Huey, you were on part of that committee where we met 3 different times to really come up with an attendance plan, and we've implemented that. Part of that was the 20-day challenge. Remember, training staff, kind of explaining to parents, students, all the support staff, administrators, the why attendance is so important to kind of start the year off in a positive way and kind of get those habits of attendance back. We did over 5,600 phone calls, as I mentioned. Those were live voices. Those robocalls are cool. Not really. Nobody listens to those. But the live voice, it's a little bit more personable. I did want to just kind of go over a little bit of attendance data with you, because we are proud of this, although we have a long ways to go. You can see some real increases across the board with our student groups. I'd like to really point out our low income students, which were 2.7 growth, which again doesn't sound like a whole lot, but remember, individualize those. And that's a lot of students who are voting with their cheeks in that seat. So also our special education took a big jump. You can look across the board. So I do want to let the board know we're going to continue monitoring this with the year-over-year data. I think that's important. 20 days is a very small sample size, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because this is a journey. All right, so exclusionary discipline, basically removing someone as a disciplinary measure, trying to change behavior by removing a student completely from the school. That is our exclusionary discipline. I'm going to go over quite a few different student groups in this, but I do want to kind of explain. Out of school suspension is just that. The student is removed from the school. They are not allowed there. In school suspension is still an administrative suspension, but they are in, whether it's an in-house or another classroom with the teacher. Now, class suspension, that's done by the teacher. So I just want to clarify, that is normally for 45 to 60 minutes at a time. And then they would go to their next period, even in elementary. So they would go to their next subject. So if you look up here, the data is a little mixed, and we've done better with reducing our exclusionary removing, but we have gone up with our in-school suspensions and our class suspensions. And that's kind of a double-edged sword right there, where we cannot assist when we remove the child from the school. What I mean by assist is go over SELs, work on that individualized to make sure they're still doing their work. When we send a student home, we don't know what they're doing. And I think we all get that. But when we do have students, we do have a little bit of control. So that's what I mean. It's a double-edged sword there. Our class suspensions clearly are up. But I do want to be, the theme of tonight is we need staff, we need staff, we need staff. Well, we have quite a few staff members out with our education, with our special education. We have over 100 staff positions we're trying to fill right now. We're not immune with teachers either. We can go to certain sites that might have 10, 12 teachers out at a time. Other teachers are covering. It's no surprise that class suspensions are up when you really think about that. There's less aides in the class, less one-on-one support. So it's not a total shocker, but it's still something we want to keep an eye on. This was something we've been talking about for a little while. You can see that we've reduced, this is overall suspensions, right? This is out of school and in school suspension. At our secondary levels, they've made some pretty good steps for reducing suspension. Again, a very small 25-day sample size. But with our elementary, they've rocketed. And we are seeing a lot of behaviors, just like we are across the nation, that we didn't see maybe 5-10 years ago. And I do not want to blame this all on COVID, because we were starting to see these behaviors before COVID with younger and younger students. We could get into a long conversation on that. I mean, on the why. I don't think there's any one reason, but Mr. Reed, we could talk cell phones all night. I mean, I definitely think that plays a role. I think there's looking at the root cause is important, but the data does show us we're starting to see a real increase with our elementary. So also by gender. So we did see a decrease with suspensions out of school with both males and females. In the opposite direction with in-school suspension and class suspensions went up pretty equally, but our males are definitely being suspended at a much higher rate than our females. And again, that's a much longer discussion as well. Oh boy, this graph. Some people love it, some do not. I'm gonna stay quiet. But this does kind of show, again, with a small sample size. Yeah, put your glasses on for this one. But you can see by race, some of our races, and again, it's year over year, but some of our races are doing better. They're improving. The majority, as far as less suspensions compared to last year at this time. Two student groups that did not benefit. Actually, I'll talk about that in just a second. The number of out-of-school suspensions for all race groups declined in the first 25 days, except for Asian students, Filipino, American Indian, and Alaskan Native. A very small sample size with those groups, though. Two of our groups did not benefit from reductions in out-of-school suspension. And those are students with disabilities and our English learners. And again, I know we're working super hard. I know HR we're trying to fill those spots where we have, and you could go talk with Elena or Betty Jo. We realize we have so many positions out for supporting those students. I mean, we're talking triple digits. So again, I wish I could say I was shocked at this data, but I'm not until we can get those positions filled, or at least get that into double digits, hopefully single digits. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back over to Dr. Huber.
So just quickly, the graduation data, as you can see, we went back to 2017 to 2022. But again, we have to recognize the caveat that once COVID hit, we did implement the safety net that was first, mandated, and then there's been some relaxation in terms of it's up to the board now of to how long they want to continue that of the 130 credits rather than our 220 credits that are required to graduate, for students that need that safety net. So again, as you can see, 91.4% back to 2017, and then our high was 2021 at 93.5, and then this last year 92.9. But again, there was a number of students in the last 2 years that did use the 130, maybe not going all the way down to 130, but they graduated not at 220, that with less credits than the full 220. We'll have some more information coming to the board on this in terms of the next 2 years, so that will be upcoming. We are working on a credit recovery plan, especially at all of our high schools, in terms of providing support for students that are still struggling, that are still short in terms of the credits needed to reach the full 220. And again, we'll have more information on that at a later board meeting. Also, we just want to somewhat end the presentation this evening in terms of, so what are we doing in terms of all this data? And again, to Mr. Meyer's point, we really are trying to change the way we are thinking in terms of the data. And we are talking kids, we are talking families. And so in terms of what the data is showing us, we are moving to really look at the data systematically at specific points throughout the year. So we will be continuing to focus on the same data points so we can see year after year after year how we are impacting areas. And if we're not impacting areas, then perhaps we need to look at a program. Maybe it's time to change that program because we're not getting the results that we want. We are continue to focus on professional learning communities. We have supports in the schools. We have supports for our principals. So that work is also very consistent. There's a formation of a math cadre that is coming online because in 2024, the state will there will be a new math adoption. And so we've got 20 teachers spanning K-12 that are going to help us in terms of that charge of what we will be doing at Folsom Cordova in response to the math adoption. And then also we are working with Folsom Lake College as well as perhaps some other community colleges to look at college readiness and to develop alternatives to integrated Math 3. We're also looking to start the conversations again in terms of reforming our grading system, and that is going to be a long process because there's all sorts of aspects of grading that are traditional in nature. Parents and community members have a certain aspect or expectation in terms of grades, but we're also hearing from places like the colleges in terms of students need to be able to show what they can do. And the traditional grading system more and more is becoming antiquated in terms of a number of factors perhaps impacting a grade or inflating a grade rather than actually the grade reflecting what students know and or are able to do. And so it's a really important conversation as we move forward that we update our grading system to be more standards-based and to be more specific in terms of it really shows what your student knows and what they can do. And then also we're continuing focusing on early literacy practices because again, we know that literacy in students who are literate, that really is the key to almost every single subject as they move through our system K-12. If you can't read, you are really going to struggle with the curriculum the higher up you go in terms of the grade levels. We also, as you heard earlier this evening, and you'll hear more about this as we go along, the Community Schools Initiative is where we're headed in terms of providing those wraparound and whole child supports. We're working with different groups, Improve Your Tomorrow, Earth Mama Healing, Mr. Pryor group in the future, to really help the kids who need more support. We have CRI, Resilient Trauma Informed Care Training that we now have. We have 23 teams of clinical mental health staff, school psychologists, equity leaders. So there's a lot of personnel that we do have out on sites to help students, especially students who are in situations. We need to be more trauma informed in terms of the way we're interacting with kids, in terms of the way we're conducting class. And then also we're really looking at improving our systems to address root causes, not just the symptoms, but what really is at the base of what is causing the struggles for our students. And especially in terms of what Mr. Meyer was talking about, we're seeing some of those struggles and some of those behaviors earlier and earlier and earlier than in past. finally, I just want to give you kind of the look down the road. And so this will be consistent year to year to year. So 3 times a year, we will be coming to you to present data in a really consistent manner. This is the presentation, obviously, October 20th. Our next presentation for you will be February 16th. And we'll be doing a grade report card that will show you where we ended up. That's the end of the first semester. We'll also be talking more about Operation Graduation, as well as attendance and behavior. And then in the summer, we'll be looking at our diagnostics, the first and the third, and the trends that come from that, our grades report, our attendance and behavior, as well as the data that we collected from Panorama. So I do want to say that there's some real excitement around data for the first time. I can tell you, I remember vividly as a teacher myself 100,000 years ago, and my district came one day with a binder. It was literally about this thick. And they threw it on my desk, and it was all my kids. I had about 185 kids between all my classes. And I can tell you I was completely overwhelmed. I just didn't know what to do. I was like, what do I do with this? And that has been, I think, an approach for many, many years in terms of we can drown everyone in data, but what do you do with it? So working with SCOE, working with a bunch of different partners, and then working internally with this amazing team, we really are becoming much more purposeful. And we're for the first time, we're actually getting our principals together, K-12, and in feeding patterns in terms of the elementary schools that feed into the middle school to the high school. And we're looking at longitudinal data. Not just to say we looked at data, but so that you can really look for those patterns, and then how are we going to intervene in terms of students who need more support, or how are we going to enrich for students who are already there? So that concludes our presentation. Pretty much the whole team is available if you have any questions.
Actually, let's start with the students, see if they have any questions. Board Member Perez?
Hi, yeah, no questions. I just wanted to say that students who get suspended or expelled are at greater risks for academic failure or even dropouts. I believe that sometimes discipline measures are inequitably used, and I feel like these continuous measures often decrease a student's self-esteem, especially because they are still young and developing mentally and emotionally. Have there been any considerations for alternatives that will support their well-being rather than kind of insinuate a diminishing response to their behavior? For example, counseling or even serving community service hours instead of reverting to suspensions or expulsions. I feel like these alternatives are able to provide them a taste of what it feels like being involved in school and a community.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Myers speak to that, but definitely we have some things that we are approaching discipline much different than we were even just a few years ago. So, Mr. Meyer.
Yeah. I love that question. And definitely it's not like turning a light switch, right? And there's ways around not suspending. You could simply not suspend. That doesn't solve anything. That doesn't change behavior. And let's remember, that's what discipline is. It's to change behavior. So we have done, we're currently working, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but one of the groups we're working with are the Hannigans, who have a book called Don't Suspend Me. They're traveling not just nationally, but internationally. I would be willing to bet they're in some other state right now. We've been really lucky to be working with them. Not only have they came and provided multiple half-day workshops for every administrator, they're also working with our schools that have higher suspension rates, meeting with them individually. We are meeting with them actually on Monday and Tuesday. They are also, on top of that, providing the RTI, the systematic approach. We have 3 different meetings with all administrators and teams from their schools. And just so the RTI, that's really having systems in place. So if a kid comes in the office for cussing out a teacher, we have a system for that. We have established tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 responses. So we've been so reactionary the last 3-4 years, trying to fill seats for staff, trying to feed kids, trying to do a number of things that we've kind of, had to put a few things on the back burner. And in my opinion, part of that has been the systematic approaches that our schools have worked so hard before that to get. So that is one component. We're also, they do also provide a lot of alternative means. You'll hear a theme from us when we're up here, that any kind of discipline needs to be restorative, it needs to be reflective, and it needs to be educational. And forget suspension. I'm talking about the hundreds and hundreds of daily interactions that we have with students. Restorative, reflective, and educational. If you're missing any component of that, we're asking staff to kind of go back to the drawing board. Our office is also looking through every single suspension every Friday. We're not doing that for fun. We're trying to do that to calibrate our practices. I don't want to say that's Big Brother, but we want to make sure that we are reacting with that common theme at all of our schools. And that some schools are saying, yeah, that happened. We're just going to give them a Saturday school. And another school's doing a 3-day suspension. And another school is doing X and the other one's doing Y. That calibration, many of you helped with the behavior matrix that gave us a lot of leeway to do other means. The behavior matrix, Rocio, it was something that we had a 17-year-old previous one, code of conduct, purely punitive, every single thing. This one, it's littered with, and I will email it to you, it's littered with other means, alternatives, before you get to any kind of exclusionary. We have a ton of work to go, though. I'm not saying, they asked. No, but maybe what would be better and easier is we can put together a list for the board. And then if you have any questions, you can ask us and we'll put together some resources. I think it's, we have it because we have this in our drive to provide our administrators because we need to keep providing them the tools. It's not fair just to tell administrators, hey, Principal A, quit suspending. We need to build that capacity. It's not a will, it's a skill that you have to keep practicing on how to effectively do this. And we're fortunate to have the team of principals and APs that are willing to do that. So, all right,
That's good.
wait
That's
for
good.
Sean.
No, yeah, that's good. And also, why are we doing all that? Because the data tells us what we've done in the past doesn't work. All right, I mean, it's right there in the data. Suspending students off campus does not work. Those things do not work. So we have to change our practices.
Board Member Srivastava.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions and comments. I'll start by saying this issue is really personal to me. I started my organizing in the district with my co-organizer, Jordan Kaitapu, to combat disproportionate rates of suspension. And I'm proud to see that we've achieved some real changes in our discipline procedures, but I still think that there's a lot of work to be done. And one of my questions, and I know Mr. Meyer kind of touched on this, but is there a set specific district-wide procedure for administrators on what warrants a suspension and what kind of suspension based on the specific situation, or is it more subjective?
Well, there's ed code, and then what's also in terms of our code of conduct, and everyone follows that, but there is still a level of subjectivity. And so that is one of the reasons Mr. Meyer implemented the review system, and we are doing for the first time some real calibration in terms of, like as an English teacher a long time ago, I would sit with a paper with my peers, same paper, right? I would grade it, and then I'd pass it to my peer, they would grade it, and then we'd calibrate in terms of, well, why did we react that way? We're actually doing that now with our suspension and our other discipline data to try to make sure that we are doing things consistently.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had, I was speaking to a teacher, a former teacher at Cordova High, and they were sharing with me some of the difficulties that they experienced when they were trying to pursue alternatives to punitive action. And they said that when they had a student acting out in class, sometimes because of a mental health problem or other crisis, they had no other option but to send the student out of class. And then on days when the campus mental health specialists were by appointment only due to high volume of students who needed support, their only option was to do a class suspension. And I think that's kind of reflected in the increase that we're seeing this year of class suspensions. So how are we making sure that we have enough staffing for the mental health specialists, or that when they're not available, that the student has another option that's not a class suspension?
Mental health specialists are not one of the places where we're short-staffed at this time, as far as our open positions. We don't have open positions there.
Okay. So is it possible that maybe there's not enough mental health specialists per site? Because I know that there's days where they are appointment only. They won't see students who need support.
We can always use more mental health support, but I think we also need to build capacity in all of our staff. We have 2,500 staff members, and they can all be a support in one way or another, but we need to build that skill, and that's why we've done the trauma-informed practices. We have trainer of trainers we have every single nurse, social worker, mental health specialist, psychologist, and counselor went through this 3 full-day training, and now they're taking that show on the road, and they're working with campus monitors, smaller subsets at schools. So we need to build capacity. It can't be all put on MHS's shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when we're talking addiction, we're talking really major trauma. checking in with MHS once or twice, even a week, might not be enough. So, but we can walk and chew gum. We can do both, right? So I think, and there has not been a year we have not increased our MHS team by at least 1 or 2 since we've started. So.
Okay.
Just stay here. Come on back. Scott. Yeah. We're just going to be the buddy team.
It's my only exercise I'm getting today. So.
All right.
Yeah, I just have a couple of other comments. I want to say that I'm really concerned about the increase in suspensions for elementary youth. I think that kids that are young kids often exhibit morbid adolescent behavior, and particularly students of color are often unnecessarily disciplined, as the data reflects. And I think we need to make a real intentional effort to reduce elementary suspensions with the ultimate goal of having little to no elementary suspensions at all. I think that kind of discipline at such a young age has really big lifelong consequences, and I think we need to put in the effort to support those students rather than disciplining them. And I also want to emphasize the importance of holding individual sites accountable for their suspension rates. So when we have a site disproportionately having higher rates of suspensions, particularly for Black and brown youth, we need to check in and make sure that they are remaining committed to the alternatives to punitive action, whether that be the Hannigan program or something else. So thanks.
We agree.
All right. Board Member Hui.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments as well. I would say, as a mental health therapist on a campus, I certainly agree with you, Mr. Meyer, that it's often unfair to the mental health specialist when every behavioral issue gets kind of passed on to them, like, hey, please go fix this kid, which we know doesn't really work either. And I think it does oftentimes keep mental health workers from actually doing some of the more long-term work with students because they're dealing with that crisis. Though I would say, yeah, if we take that mental health lens into the behaviors in the entire campus, then I think some real change happens. So I appreciate both of those comments. I'm glad you stayed up there, Mr. Meyer, because I think most of mine are for you. If on page 11, we were talking about class suspensions, I'm curious, is it up to the teacher, the administrator, or both? How do we decide when a student is going to be serving an in-class or an out-of-class suspension?
Yeah, and we actually had a meeting today. We're revamping our classroom suspension procedures, but California Ed Code does allow a teacher to suspend for up to 2 days from that class, and they can still suspend for defiance and disruption. Or just to remind you, kindergarten through 8th grade, administrators cannot suspend at all for defiance or disruption. However, there's a loophole where teachers still can.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be a little bit of interesting situations, especially at our elementary schools. Like that's what one part of the discussion we had today is they don't have an in-house room. So if a teacher does, and now that we're starting to see more behaviors with the elementary and the class suspensions, we want to make sure that we've done A through Y before we get to Z. But yeah, California Ed Code does allow teachers to suspend for up to 2 days for defiance or disruption. But schools can have in place, and it should be a district, not a school by school, a process like before it gets to that point where there's majors and minors, where if it's major, then it could be something if it's a safety issue. But if it's a minor, what's been done, the other means, the alternatives up till then. But we need to have that structure in place, and it really needs to be district-wide. We can't be having 2 different elementary schools doing completely different things. So that calibration's easier said than done, but.
Yeah. Is it fair to say, knowing that most of those out of the classroom suspensions are done by teachers and not admin?
So out of school suspension?
Or sorry, no, the class suspensions.
Yeah, so class suspensions are 100% teachers.
Okay.
In school suspension and out of school 100% administrators.
Okay, 100% of the class suspensions are teachers. Are we tracking the teachers where maybe that have several of those suspensions, or most of them come from certain teachers, and then providing tools for those teachers to look for other means?
Our school has been rough, but we finally, for this year, we are. This is the first year we're doing it with I don't want to say 100% fidelity because there still has to be an extra box, But we do have a spreadsheet. We're reaching out to administrators if they forgot to put the teacher's name. But you're absolutely right. And it is not completely uncommon for a teacher to really be struggling, and we want to, and have a majority of the suspensions, and we want to provide help. We want to provide support to that teacher. And as Rhea had said earlier, you know, the Don't Suspend Me campaign, they work with everyone. And the strategies, whether you're talking out of school suspension or daily discipline, they can help with that. So we want to know so we can help support and recognize, you know, where those class suspensions are coming from.
That's great. It sounds like at this point we're still looking at this data. We have a plan to work with those teachers if they haven't already had any of that training. So that's kind of in process. As we speak, we're still 2 months into the
100%.
school year. Okay. I know on the campuses I've worked on, I've seen a lot of, I don't know how to put it, alternatives to suspension that aren't the types that we might want. Where students are out of the classrooms, we're just not calling it a suspension. Is there a way that we're tracking those types of instances?
There is, and that's another good question. So we've added this year in Power School because there's kind of a misconception. An alternative to suspension is Saturday school. In theory, that's true. But again, I go, is that restorative, reflective, and educational?
Right.
And maybe coupled with something else, or maybe if they're doing a program, an interactive video, then it could be. But what we have added to Power School, we've added a number, because when we enter in any incident, we can attach. And so we've added a plethora of different interventions that are evidence-based, that are not any kind of exclusionary or punitive, but they're more so, intervention-based.
Okay, great. And I'm curious with the reduction in at least the traditional suspensions where somebody's not on a school campus. Have we seen this year any reduction or increase in the types of behaviors that we're seeing on campus, or has it been pretty much what we've seen in the past?
No, we've seen a tremendous increase in behaviors. Those suspension numbers, I would hope to be much lower, but they could easily be tripled or here's me, my opinion. This is me. This is not representing all of Folsom, but I feel if we had the behavior hit we had right now, 5 years ago, our suspensions would be doubled.
Okay.
So we have a long ways to go, but I'm just being honest with you. I truly feel that we are going in the right direction, and we are seeing some really meaningful change.
Yeah.
But the behaviors, and this is across the nation. This is not isolated in Folsom, Cordova.
Right. I appreciate that information, and that's really helpful to know, especially considering what teachers and other staff are having to work with and what students are feeling every day too. So thank you for that. I have a few more if I can still have some time. On page 18, and Rhea, you kind of mentioned something around mental health workers. I was curious with, we were talking about root causes earlier, and I was just curious how many social workers we have in our district.
So we have 4 now, and we have 18 MHSs.
We have 17
Full. And how many folks do we have from SCOE? Okay.
The SCOE folks would be the mental health.
They're MF. I think they're all MFTs currently. Sometimes there's
they're
social
acting
workers.
as mental health therapists.
Yes.
Whichever license they're doing that under. Is there a difference in what a social worker does for us and what a mental health specialist does?
Mildly, and we don't call them MFTs for that reason, because they're not traditional therapists. That is part, but they're running groups. They're doing also tier 1 relationship building. They're providing professional development. Where a social worker, they do some more macro projects. They're still they're doing less ERMs, where our MHSs are traditionally doing a lot more ERMs.
So the social workers might work on things like attendance as a macro issue.
Re-entry plans for when students are coming back from our alternative education. We're now working with re-entry plans for when they're coming back from suspension. So that's the part of the lifts that they're working on, and they're supporting schools.
Okay. And I can save some of these comments till later. I am concerned that, I realize it's a very similar job description between the mental health worker and the social worker. it concerns me to hear we have 4 social workers in a school of 21,000 students. I know they probably have more work than they can possibly do. So I'll probably say this for future agenda items, but I'm curious to have a discussion around the last time we talked about funding more social workers or how we might be able to do that. I think it could have a huge impact on the work that we're doing. Just 2 more questions, I think. We have the community schools going on, I think it's on the same page. 80% more or unduplicated students is considered a community school. If I'm correct, is that 3 schools in our district, or is there more than that? 12, okay. Do we have the community schools currently in all 12 of those schools?
No, you want to? Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, the 3 number.
So we have a community schools planning grant right now, and 12 of our schools will be eligible to apply for implementation grants in the spring. I don't envision that we'll apply for all 12 all at once just to be able to build a program well. We're talking about applying for maybe 5 schools with the hopes that we get 3 funded. So maybe that's where 3.
It must be, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll know more about that in the spring, it sounds like.
Yeah, mid-January, the RFAs are being released with due dates, we understand, March 15th.
Okay, great. It's my birthday. It would be a good present to
There you
get
go.
that grant. And then last question is, we have IYT, or Improve Your Tomorrow, and Earth Mama Healing up here. I'm just curious how long it might be different for each of them. Do their contracts run through? Does anybody have that off the top of their head?
I'm pretty sure that IYT, we are in a contract with them for, is it 2 more years?
Is it
Yeah, it's
3 or
3 years,
2?
and this is our second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the initial contract with them was for 3 years. I'm not positive Earth Mama Healing, I won't say that was year to year. Yeah, that one's
Okay.
year to year.
And both of them are secondary school only?
Right now, yes, yeah, Mills Mitchell and Cordova High School.
Okay, good. That's all for me. Thanks.
All right,
Mr. President, if,
I was just going to go
oh,
down.
that's fine.
Mr. Short, do you got anything?
I was just kind of curious. I know we had that one graph where it showed low income demographics. Is it possible to get this where by school site in the future, or the ones like in Rancho Cordova school sites, and we'll see where these numbers impact the most on the
Sure,
school sites?
you bet.
I think that would tell us a story.
Great, yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Mr. Clark?
It took my one question, but that's why I wanted to go first. I wanted to go to page 7 and 8, just to talk about the CASP on the ELA as well as the math. Other than COVID, what's the other reason for the decline on the test scores on that, especially with our economically disadvantaged and our Black African-American students? What's the other reason?
I think, well, COVID was a big one, and for students just to get adjusted back, last year was the first full year they had. Part of it, that what we saw was there was a hard time reaching all of the students. Attendance was an issue, so participation wasn't where we would like it to be. But I can tell you, every single site, they were making calls during the day, evenings, to reach these students. It was hard getting all of our students on campus, let alone take a test.
Okay. Well, I know back in the day, they used to have, and maybe Scott can answer this, because I've been on a couple of the knock and talks. Can we implement that again, especially for our students that have high absenteeism?
Can I jump in?
Yep.
Knock and talks are very much alive. Mr. Terry Douglas.
Okay.
And Maggie Coonan, our new attendance specialist. Thank you very much.
Gotcha.
Both those positions were granted by the board. Every Wednesday, they do 4 hours. I would love it. They would love it if any of you would like to join them. I am still doing some of those. We've gone away from before, Mr. Clark, where we had SROs. We're still using SROs for wellness checks, which are pretty rare, but we're actually having the sites go first.
Right.
Because they have the connection. You have some guy in a tie show up, but that's one of the reasons, Terry Douglas, and he knows all of Rancho Cordova, and he does. I mean, they're every other house they know him. So
Right.
we are still having the sites do that, but you are more than welcome. That's an open invitation.
Oh, I will.
They would love it. And I'm doing less of them just because I've been staying pretty busy with my day job, but they are very powerful. They do move the needle, literally. So.
Okay. And I share the same sentiment with our student board members about the elementary school suspension. I wish there was something or somehow we can address that, especially when we're doing a whole child response. And the one thing that I noticed on here is great, we have Improve Your Tomorrow. Great, we have Earth Mama Healing. Soon we'll have Black Youth Leadership Project on board. But one thing that I will request and I will ask for is the progress on our DCM, our Restorative Youth Justice through BCLC. Only because I'm the program manager, I'm kind of curious on the numbers of what's happening in Rancho Cordova, one of the sites that I oversee, and I will be requesting that through the Folsom Cordova Community Partnership. I want some data on that, on how many students we're capturing, the process that he's doing it, whether it's at Cordova, Mills, or Mitchell. But I'm just wondering if there's any way we can have a program like that in our elementary schools, perhaps to cut down on those suspensions.
Right, because he can only work with our middle school and
Right,
above.
middle and high.
And he is working with our SARBs, attending SARBs, discipline conferences.
Okay.
Really taken off. Last year, we're moving forward. This year, been really, really happy working with him, and the kids like him, and he's good at what he does. I think we have to remember I said look in the mirror, and I know HR is working really hard. We need a more diverse staff. I mean, we get that. And I think sometimes staff or students will listen to other people that don't look like me or that look like them. We get that, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. I think that's one of the reasons, as you mentioned, we need to continue working with outside organizations. We don't have the time to wait and hope that we get applicants for certain positions.
Right.
And I think that's where some of the programs, and I know talking with my colleagues about Laureen, who has been around for a while. She's not just coming in. She's been around, had a lot of street cred. That's what we want. We have the programs out there, and we need to bring them in. And I couldn't agree more. The younger, the better. I mean, we have to look like we're investing.
Sure.
And if we're looking at it from a business lens, your return on investment, it's much easier at a younger age than to try and fix a really severe problem when the students are older. So I agree with you, and hold us accountable for that.
Also, in terms of, to that point, Mr. Clark, we're bringing back next year a partnership we started right before the pandemic hit, Education Through Music, which is a big impact on especially the elementary and especially that TK through third grade, where students are just learning, in terms of their own, self-power, but also how do I interact with a peer in an appropriate manner? How do I, withhold my expectation? How come it's not my turn? It's not my turn. And rap, rhythm, and rhyme, right, is a great way of teaching a lot of social skills. And so it's a great tool. It got tremendous feedback from our teachers in terms of the tool bag it gave them to help teach, those social, emotional aspects of the classroom. So we'll be bringing that back for teachers next year.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's it. And Scott, I know I've worked with you with our DCM. I'm just wondering if there's another alternative, like utilizing not only the referrals, but maybe something in a behavioral contract in lieu of suspension to hook them up with a DCM. That way they'll have that extra support. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Good.
Mr. Clark.
All right, Board Member Hoover.
Thank you. Well, my colleagues have asked a lot of really good questions, so I'll keep it pretty short. I appreciate you highlighting what this district did to get our kids back to in-person instruction. I think it made a huge difference, and if we look at the numbers when compared to surrounding school districts on the loss of learning that they experience. In fact, I'd be interested, maybe not publicly, but maybe in a follow-up email to see how these test scores maybe compare to some of our neighboring school districts. Because my guess is that, while this is not something to celebrate, it's something we need to work on. There's also, we're probably also in a better place than maybe some of our surrounding districts. And so I'm very thankful for highlighting that. I did have one question, obviously on the suspension issue, we want to keep kids in the classroom to the greatest extent possible. But, when we're talking about disruptive students and, things like that, have we had a conversation with FCEA on these issues as well? Because I think we need to be careful not to take away power from teachers on managing their own classroom. We need to be careful that disruptive students, in some cases are removed from the classroom so that other students are able to continue learning. I don't want to go too far on the pendulum where, we have chaos in the classroom that cannot be addressed because our teachers no longer have the ability to run their classroom. And so, can you speak to that as well and how we're going to balance those two priorities? Because we obviously want to keep kids in the classroom, right. But we also want to support teachers and make sure all kids are able to continue learning. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
No, you speak to a really important point, and it's a complex issue for a lot of the reasons you just brought up. A lot of times teachers themselves will start hearing from parents. My student is coming home and, geez, every day Jimmy in that classroom is causing havoc. And my student talks about, well, the teacher didn't do anything today, or we had to spend so much time while the teacher worked with Jimmy. I taught classroom management for many years in the credentialing programs, and that it all comes back to working with teachers to give them tools. And you're exactly right. As an administrator, a lot of times if I had a teacher that was struggling with classroom management, a lot of times what would be asked of the administrators, will you come in and talk to the kids, or will you come in? And the answer is always no. And the reason for that is because you cannot remove that authority from the teacher. As soon as that happens, then you've diminished that teacher in the classroom. And so we were back to, I couldn't agree more. We have a great relationship with FCEA, which I'm so appreciative of, because we're back to, we got to build the skills for teachers. We got to help build that tool belt, because there's a ton of different ways you can react to a situation in the classroom. And again, a lot of times it's the teacher's reaction that will determine where there's something goes left or right. And let's face it, you're a human being, and you've got, if you're a secondary teacher, you've got between 175 and 220, 230 students that you're seeing a day. If you're an elementary school teacher, you're with that same group of kids, but there's a lot that has to be done. And so we have to build the capacity of teachers. And then also, we're using this year, to one of the things Mr. Meyer said a little earlier, this really is our starting point now. I mean, this is our new beginning. And so we're going to start looking from this point forward in terms of, are we making growth and are we showing improvement? Because students are coming to us with different needs than they did. It's just true that students are coming to us with different needs, even different than 5 years ago, but because of the pandemic. We already know there was great needs before the pandemic. Well, now that has been compounded. And so we've got to behave in a different way, but we need support, we need training in terms of dealing with kind of this new normal, and so that we don't react the way we did. And I agree with Mr. Meyer. I can tell you, when I was an assistant principal, I think double was kind. I think our suspension rates would probably be triple to quadruple if we were back 5 years ago the way we used to do the business of school. So.
Thank you. And I think that's the only question I have for tonight, but, just want to say thanks for this presentation, I think, and for the work we're continuing to do. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have a lot of work to do, but I am very thankful that I think, we're in a place, we're starting from a better place, I hope, than maybe some other districts. And I look forward to seeing this progress, so.
All right, as for myself, if we could go back to slide 7. Oh, we're on slide 7. Okay. I guess this kind of dovetails with what Board Member Hoover just mentioned. I would be curious, the second point there that says decline performance in surrounding districts. Okay, so we've seen decline performance in surrounding districts, but I would love to know how we compared with them. So obviously, we did enough to know that there was declining performance in other districts, but did we also then compare how did we do versus other districts?
That's the first thing I do when I look at that. Well, because we're looking at embargoed data, I'm not able to comment on any of the surrounding districts.
Got it.
I have looked at the information. We have the public release on Monday, and I think we'll be,
More information to come.
yes.
Okay, so we'll have that information soon.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's see. Slide 10, page 10. Yeah, you know, what this tells me is what a difference can be created when we have hands-on a contact with our students. Not robocalls, not letters, not emails, but actual human-to-human contact, finding out what's going on and encouraging them to attend school and explain to them the benefits of attending school. So, obviously this is just the first 20-day snapshot, but this concerted effort, did that end at the end of the 20 days, or is that still ongoing?
Well, there was a lot to it. It wasn't just the phone calls.
Right.
We changed robocall times. We did a lot of extensive training with support staff. So that's lasting. But the extra support that we had, we did give hourly rates to get additional folks to make those calls. That we are going to bring back in January, another 20-day type where we're going to call and get that habit. Because even 2 weeks can break a habit, especially for some of our most vulnerable students. So, but no, we're not providing the extra funds for the extra calls. But that habit from making that call, we're seeing stick at some, but not all of our sites.
Well, it would be interesting at the end of the school year to take a look at both the fall and the spring term and compare the first 20 days of each term when you had that concentrated effort, and then compare it to the rest of the term where you didn't necessarily have all of the same effort, and then try to extrapolate what would have happened if we had continued it for the entire term, and then taking a look at since we get state funding based on attendance, what the delta would have been and what we could extrapolate what we would have made if we had continued that effort for the entire term. And then look at what the cost would have been if we had those individuals paid for that extended effort. And basically, I think you probably see where I'm going. Would it pay for itself if we had that same effort for the entire school year versus the first 20 days of the spring and fall term? And potentially not only pay for itself, but it might actually generate even additional revenue up and over what it would have cost. So obviously, this is an experiment, and which is appropriate. But I think there's an opportunity for us to learn from this experiment at the end of the year and do a deep dive and potentially look to see if we could expand the program.
Sure.
But this is great. Look at this. I don't think there was a single decline. They were all up. Yeah, and some dramatically up. Congratulations. I guess I should have started off with that. Congratulations.
That goes out to the sites. They're the ones doing the work.
Well, extend my congratulations to the site. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we could thank the attendance task force too, who started the work last spring, very focused and intentional on what our strategies were going to be this year.
Yeah. All right. Let's see, page 16. All right. So, I liked what the trend we were seeing on some of the earlier slides where we were seeing breakdown by a race, ethnicity, and gender. Thank you on that very much. But we seem to have forgotten to do that on this slide.
You correct that.
Yeah, I very much would love to see this graduation rate done by race, gender, and ethnicity.
No problem.
Okay. And it doesn't need to be another presentation, but if we could get the
Sure.
superintendent to email that out to
Sure.
the board. Thank you.
And we'll just include it from this point forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then, let's see, I have just one more note here. And I guess this, again, dovetails with Mr. Hoover's comments regarding in-school and out-of-school suspension and thinking outside the box and potentially something that would be involved in a future, I guess, negotiations with the union. But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to leverage technology. You know, I mean, clearly we know that having students sit at home not only doesn't necessarily resolve the behavior, but then you have learning loss, and then that learning loss spins out of control when they're back on campus because they're even worse off and struggling more on education, and then perhaps they act out more because they're even more frustrated, and it's a reoccurring theme, and then potentially back on suspension status. And what I'm wondering is, and I 100% appreciate what Mr. Hoover was saying about, you know, we can't take all authority away from the teachers. I mean, they have to manage their classes. I completely get that. But at the same time, you know, I'm wondering if we couldn't leverage the technology that we bought during the pandemic, which by and large is collecting dust. Every single classroom has a camera. And I know we can't just turn them on because we need to go through collective bargaining for that. But wouldn't a solution potentially be, if there's a disruptive student, to get that disruptive student out of the classroom to another supervised room in the school facility, have a computer or laptop set up, give them, you know, earphones, turn on the camera from their classroom, and have them watch the lesson, but we have successfully removed the disruptive behavior away from the classroom that allows the teacher to continue to teach, but we haven't deprived the student of the ability to learn.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I think that we have a lot of work to do with the bargaining unit and with our teachers to just, you know, look for other opportunities. There are a number of different ideas that we are kind of entertaining in regard to the technology that is at our disposal and what the possibilities are. So that is absolutely part of the conversations that they're being had currently. But there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. But yeah,
Is that scenario a possibility?
I would think that scenario would be a possibility. There's also some talk about in terms of what used to be the detention room, if you will, as a place of also being able to put students with a credentialed teacher, and that being a place they could go to continue still working on their work. They're not leaving the campus. There's a teacher in the classroom to help. It's not just, you know, a person, you know, for lack of a better term, babysitting, where they're just spending time. Mm-hmm. They're still there and still able to engage with coursework. So they're also, you know, using technology to make that possible. So there's a whole bunch of different possibilities that, you know, we're pretty excited about, and we'll be working with our teachers and our administrators to figure out what's the best approach.
So not to put you on the spot, but let me ask a question. So if this has to be involved in collective bargaining, when will this collective bargaining be taking place to have this conversation? Maybe that's a... Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a process in terms of us looking at different possibilities, looking at how technology might be run, how the technology we have could be used, and then engaging the teachers with, you know, here are some possibilities, getting their ideas as well. So it definitely would be a process. To your point, it wouldn't be something we could flip on next week. But down the road, as we continue, we're looking at all possibilities. We want to keep kids on campus. So everything's pretty much on the table. We just have to figure out what's the best way to use it.
Well, I understand that the process sometimes goes slow, but I would, even if it was an agreement with the union that an approach like that is potentially workable, and that we agree that we would look to launch it at the beginning of the next school year. I completely get it. We have to go in steps, right. But you know, that's progress in my mind if we have a date certain that we are going to implement something new like that. So, all right, that's it for my questions. Let's see, is discussion, but no action item, but I will open to the public if the public has anything they would like to add. Public comment, we'll go 2 minutes. Please come up. And please state your name.
So hi, well, do you want your laptop? No. Okay. All right, my name's Jen Tarbox, and I actually just want to comment, I don't know if it's a question or not, but in regards to the elementary kids with the in-class suspension, I had the privilege of going to 2 of our elementary sites over the last 2 weeks for site visits, and the principal of one of the sites and a couple teachers from the other sites said pretty much the exact same thing for elementary, and what that was if you have a 4th grade teacher, they're saying that the kids that they got this year were more, it was like starting at 2nd grade, right? Like, so they're not only teaching what they always taught, which was 4th grade, it's almost working with a child who emotionally and interacting with other children is in the 2nd grade level. I have to imagine that that is part of that increase in the in-class suspension, that behavior issues that they're having. So with that, I would hope it would start to drop as we kind of step out of those years, but is there class support knowing it with your data, if that is what it is, if it's that behavioral issues, what supports are there that we can maybe offer the teacher? Because that's going from having a 7-year-old to a 10-year-old. I mean, that's huge in emotional standards, right? Just even as a parent. And so when you have this teacher who's sitting there with, really there's 30 kids in the class, but it's 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade kind of emotionally all in one. I would think if there's some sort of service or support that we can look at in regards to how can we aid those teachers when they're, especially when the year first starts, right? And these kids are playing catch up emotionally, maybe that would help drop that in class or that suspension rate for the elementary level. Like what is it if that's across the board at all the sites, if we're looking at 4th and 5th grade? So that's just a thought I had as we talked, because that was a conversation we had with some educators when I was with, Dr. Klegan and Huber. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Please come up.
I just have a couple of requests. So I don't remember what page it was on. I'm not as thorough as you all are. But one of the pages it talked about, and it's really hard to see the colors from out here. I wasn't sure what I was looking at, but I'm asking for the disaggregated data that kind of shows, I know it said that Black and African American suspensions went down. I would like to see what they went down to as opposed to being told 7 to 4. I kind of want to look at the categories myself to kind of determine what type of supports may be needed. Additionally, I agree about this slide as well. We want to see the disaggregated data. And then I forgot my last point, but I was going to ask about, and I forgot. I don't remember. But it was really good, though. I promise you. It was really good. I know. I'm gonna take 30 seconds and I'm gonna think. But when we're talking about, that's what it was. When we're talking about removing students and putting them in another place in front of a computer, that's going to bring flashbacks of the hard time they had with distance learning, and it's also called exclusionary discipline. So before we actually put something like that on the table, we need to figure out if there is a way to keep them there with extra supports instead of removing them. So I just wanted to add that in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, online.
Yes, we have Debbie.
Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, this is Debbie Gregorian, FCEA. Thank you for this presentation. I just want to reiterate what Scott was saying. We're seeing a rise in behavior in more of our younger elementary students, where this started before COVID, but I think a lot of it is the frustration of not being able to voice their opinions, so they act out more, and they're more violent. We're seeing more hitting of teachers and pushing and shoving teachers and other kids, and a lot of it is coming back to those support systems and what's being put into place in the class. We gave up early late which gave us time to have that small group instruction and to really get to know our kids. I'd be interested in the data that we have with the age group since we no longer have the early late to build those relationships. I'd like to see what kind of data we have on that. And the reason for it is, the board promised supports in the classroom, and no fault of anybody's, we're not able to hire enough supports in the classroom to be able to implement some of those lower student to teacher ratio or adult to child ratio. And this is really important. I talked to one teacher at one school in Rancho that's had a half hour of aid times, and she teaches second grade. And I know that there's other teachers out there as well. And it's not the school's fault, not the district's fault, it's the lack of applications. And I know we're going really hard in trying to find people, but it would be interesting to see, that early late results. And that's all. But Scott, thank you for acknowledging the fact that there would be a lot more suspensions if the work the district has started and the community has really helped us with had not been put in place before now. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. All right, well, that finishes that discussion. Thank you very much for that presentation. I think it was a wealth of information, and it definitely will answer some of the questions I know the board has been asking over the last couple of months. So thank you. All right, going on to agenda item 14, information. Superintendent.
Yes, we have the 22-23 budget book put together, and you have a hard copy of it, spiral bound. And I do want to publicly thank Mr. Martin and Linda Thurlow, our Director of Fiscal Services, and her team, who work very hard behind the scenes in all the pages that you see in there. But it's a reflection of the adopted budget that the board adopted in June. And Mr. Martin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just recognition again of the staff, all the entire team on the fiscal team who put that together. It is very extensive, time-intensive document. We're going to continue to look at that and try to maybe work on getting timelines so it's closer in line with when the budget is adopted. But that may mean streamlining some of the documents in there. And so love feedback on that as well of the value of this document, because obviously it is a big timepiece. So we're going to keep looking at ways that we can get information to you in a more timely manner, but maybe more synthesized as well. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, 2022 secondary summer school report.
And this is coming as an information item as well, and we give the board a summary after our summer school programs. So this is reflective of our elementary, middle, and high school programs. And again, a shout out to all of our administrators who ran our extended school year and our summer school programs at multiple sites throughout the summer.
All right. Thank you for that information. All right, that moves us to agenda item 15, superintendent's report.
Yeah, a couple things. First, I want to just acknowledge our two student board members and your comments and your deep analysis of the data and bringing things to light. And your voice is so important in this process, and I want to thank you for what you shared this evening. We also have some shout outs for some of our staff in schools. We have an ABC 10 Teacher of the Month, Mr. James Van Scheer, PE teacher at Theodore Judah, who was recognized this last week. And if you've ever been to one of his PE classes, you don't sit and watch, you participate. You participate, and it's a lot of fun. And there's always music involved. So we want to congratulate him. And I also want to congratulate 3 of our schools that were recognized for PBIS distinctions over the last couple of weeks. Mills Middle School has earned the silver level of distinction 2 years in a row now. And I think a lot of that goes back to how we're building culture and climate, and we have culture climate facilitators at every site that are helping to lead that work, along with our administrative team and all of our support staff. So we do a shout out for Mills. Natoma Station also earned the silver level of distinction for the first time, and Mangini Ranch Elementary brand-new school earned the bronze level of distinction. So again, we want to thank them and acknowledge those that are providing those caring, supportive, and inclusive environments at our schools. And then just a date to put on our calendars, and we can send this out if it isn't already sent out, but the Folsom History Museum is doing an acknowledgement of the history of Folsom High School for the last 100 years as they're celebrating their 100th year anniversary, and they're doing a special reception for all of us on October 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. So if you're interested, we'll be sending that out. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board member reports. We'll start with the student board members. So board member Perez.
I just want to speak on behalf of the Cordova High teacher occurrence this week and acknowledge that being a teacher is challenging. I've witnessed student disinterest to understand a teacher's perspectives and witnessed blatant disrespect from them directed to the teachers. And this is where I believe that social emotional learning comes into place to improve character development and student/teacher well-being. And really in this case, the teacher's intent was to reinforce good behavior from the student after continuous disrespect. And while the delivery was unprofessional, the teacher is generally known to be loved and appreciated for his caring and uplifting character. So in that case, I vouch to keep this teacher at Cordova High and grant him another chance like they've done to other teachers with cases a little more severe than this. And then in regards to Jen's public comment earlier, some support for the younger youth in elementary can come from high school leaders that are able to promote and radiate positive energy and kindness to the elementary schoolers. For example, maybe having high schoolers take a little trip to visit elementary sites and read them books to teach a positive lesson, or really just kind of have an influence on the younger students. I feel like this possibility could have amazing impacts on both high school and elementary students. And I know that myself used to be inspired and influenced heavily by many other students when I was younger. So I think that that could be a really good possibility to do. Thank you.
Okay, excellent idea. Board member Srivastava.
Yeah, I want to talk about the incident that occurred at Vista's football game last week. And first of all, I want to send my deepest condolences to the students and families that were impacted by the event. And though I can't say the incident was a harsh reminder of the bigotry that exists within our community, I can't say I was surprised. This is far from the first incident of its kind. And I want to read a letter that I wrote to Vista's administration, as well as my fellow board members and FCUSD's cabinet regarding the incident. Some of my feedback is more site level, while others is district wide. So we have made strides in advancing equity and inclusivity in the past few years, and I am proud of our commitment to reducing disproportionality, our expansion of social emotional learning practices, and our greater emphasis on listening to student voices, particularly those of our marginalized youth. But as evidenced by this incident, there is much room to grow. I can personally attest to the frequency of microaggressions and racism that occur on Vista's campus, as I've experienced them myself, and for guests on our campus to have experienced that level of bigotry is simply unacceptable. Now is not the time to assuage community concerns about the safety of our students of color by simply affirming that the situation will be investigated and handled, and that the individuals involved will be reprimanded. As important as those actions are, we must take broader action to deal with the underlying problems that cause this kind of behavior, a few of which I've outlined below. Students need to be taught a culturally relevant curriculum that addresses the diversity of our backgrounds. Ethnic studies not only allows students of color to see themselves represented in their classrooms and textbooks, it also exposes our broader school-wide community to understand historical marginalization, the richness of other cultures, and the importance of inclusivity, thus reducing bigotry. I was really excited to see ethnic studies pass the Curriculum Advisory Committee yesterday, and I want to stress the importance of bringing ethnic studies to the board as soon as possible so that we can get the ball moving on offering the course, and also affirm to our marginalized students that we're taking real action. We must make an intentional effort to diversify our student government. There are many opportunities within student government to foster equity and inclusion campus-wide that we are not taking advantage of. For example, as important as Vista's Awareness Week was, there was no acknowledgement of essential issues like racism, nor were there additional resources offered to students related to their mental health, apart from wearing a colored t-shirt to show their support. Last year, students had to create an unofficial Spirit Day to encourage their peers to wear their cultural clothing to school because it was not planned by ASB. If students of color were intentionally involved in the planning of campus-wide events, we could foster inclusion. Students need to be taught social emotional learning curriculum. Students need anti-racism education that is created and reviewed by people of color. Whether it be a school-wide assembly or an advisory lesson, students need to understand the impact of their actions. And students deserve accountability. When an incident like this occurs, students need to know that the situation will be properly handled or they will not report it next time. It can be extremely difficult to be vulnerable enough to report an incident of racism, bigotry, or harassment of any kind for that matter, and students need to be able to trust that their school site and district will properly handle it. Following this incident and the many others that have occurred in our community in the past few months, students of color may require additional mental health support, and I trust that we will intentionally provide it. I believe strongly that with the right commitment and collaboration, our community can come together and heal the harms inflicted on students of color. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Hui.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Yeah, I think a lot of it is we hold two things together, that we have come a long way and that we have so far to go, and in some ways a step backwards. So I appreciate you leading us in that. And not just, I think as you mentioned, with issues of race, but with our LGBTQ plus students and others on campus, we have to create a safe environment where everybody can thrive. So we will continue that work in where we have to fill in those gaps. The only other comment I had tonight, I neglected, I think, to really thank the staff that put together the fall vital signs presentation. I know a lot of work went into it, so appreciate all of that work. I think of that kind of the same way as this other topic, that, this is something to celebrate. I mean, those attendance numbers, the suspension numbers, that is movement in the right direction. That's really exciting, and we have a long way to go. So we'll continue to work at this, but we shouldn't let that stop us from recognizing we have done a lot of good work. We'll continue to do a lot of good work, and we're always going to have more to do. So thank you to those that, not just that put that together, but of course, all the teachers and admin and everybody else that have been calling, knocking on doors, really thinking through how to care for students. I know that's happening every day. So it's appreciated and it's seen, and let's keep it up.
Thank you. Board Member Short.
Kind of piggyback what Tim was saying. I appreciate the the presentation. We're going to get more information in the future, I think, drilling down by site and other things. But one of the things that I think that we didn't get out of it is I got a lot of parents that have been asking me that, after COVID, we're doing a good job, but we got a lot more to do. But there's parents that are really concerned about math and English, and how are they going to catch up in that 2 years, and the resources that are available for other than what we're doing here as school district. I know maybe the superintendent might have some ideas on a list of things that we're doing for mitigation for learning loss. Maybe that could be shared at a future meeting, and maybe the board can have that dialogue. I think you had a list that we're talking about. I think that'd be good to bring, because we are doing quite a bit. But I think parents need to know what is available for resources for them. One is, I don't know what, is the governor have $1 billion coming back on stuff that they can be able to do. What is it there? What is it for parents to use for tutoring? What other than above and beyond what the school district is doing? Is there any resources out there? It seems like their perspective, knowing what resources would be great to know. So I think it'd be something good for the board to talk and dialogue with the parents' perspective of exactly what it is to help these kids that are 2 years behind, and how we're going to get them there. I think there's a lot of concern out there. So I think that's one of the areas I would like to have on a future agenda item. I think we can just segue to the next one, part of that discussion, and continue with it. I think it'd be important. Other than that, I just appreciate everything we're doing. I also want to piggyback on the incident. We should, as me individually, and I think that type of behavior should not be condoned, and we have a lot of work to do in that area, and so we need to continue to improve in that area. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to echo Board Member Rocio and Shrivastava on their comments, and I want to just personally thank you guys for your advocacy and your voice. It is well needed on this board, so I appreciate both of you. Mr. Short, you have mentioned about learning loss and how we're 2 years behind. I want to disagree with you. I think we're further behind on that because you're not accounting statistically for the summer months, where our students are falling behind. And even though they're going to summer school, they are still falling behind. And we need to get some supports in place, especially for our ESL and our socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged youth. With that being said, yeah, we've made some great progress. I'm proud of this district. I'm proud of the distinguished awards at Mills and Russell Ranch, and I can't remember the other one that I normally go to, Mangini. You know, we're doing some good things, so I'm particularly proud of the work that the district's doing. I will say that last week I did go to Gold Ridge Elementary, and I want to make an apology to those 6 teachers that were a little upset at me because I didn't stop by their class, but time was limited. But I appreciate Brooke Webster going by her class and talking to her students about governance and election cycles and everything else. I look forward to going back and helping her out when they start talking about civic duties for their students. I did go by Ranch Cordova Elementary for the 4th time. I didn't go to visit classrooms like I normally do. I went there to just visually survey the facility. Saw a few things that I made note of, that I made the superintendent aware of. But my question would be, on those things that were mentioned at the last meeting, were any work orders done, Superintendent? You can answer that for me.
Yes, and well, you'd sent me a picture of one of the items, and yeah, it was addressed, I think, within the next 2 days after that. So that one was a work order in progress.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I just want to make sure that if we are seeing things that need to be done, that we communicate with our principal to make sure that they are aware of it and a work order is issued and we get those repairs done. I'm not in the habit of going to visit schools and the first thing on my list is to check out the facilities. Again, like I said in the last meeting, that is not my focus. My focus is on the health and well-being of our students, to see if they're succeeding in education, and to check on our teachers. That's my main focus of visiting classrooms. So anyway, with that being said, hopefully we can work on the communication to our principals. If there are facilities that need repair, replacement, or whatever, that we communicate that with the principals and not the board. I know that we do have a responsibility to oversee the district operations, but we have to put it in the hands of the staff to take care of those things, and it starts with our only employee, the superintendent. That is it. That is all.
Thank you. Board Member Hoover.
No report.
All right, there we go. As for myself, I first want to start off by thanking and congratulating Angela and your staff. That website, the new revised website, is absolutely wonderful. And I know it was a team effort, so I'll give you a second if you want to mention some of the team. I hate to do that because you always forget one person, but
I would love to. May I, please?
Yes, please. Yeah, please.
All right.
Well, first of all, thank you very, very much. And Pam Oyen has been my thought partner and team member on this. Ed McCarthy and ETIS, and then my entire team, Robin Mandeville, my assistant, and Jimena Brioni, our communication specialist. And then, of course, the collaboration of, honestly, all of the departments. We have spent hours together, and Education Services, which now has its own center spot, right there in the middle. And that's I keep saying this, and they know I've said this before, it's the sun, and we all rotate around that. And so really proud that that website and the team here has been so collaborative. So really thank you to everybody very much. It's been a labor of love for about 2 years. So we've got more to go. We've got our school websites next.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge the college and career night that we had this week over at Folsom High, but it was all three of the high schools participated. It was great to see that back in person. It was the first time since 2019 that our college and career night was in person. So personal thank you to the college and career clerks for all the hard work in putting that on. I know that that's not easy, and look forward to next year's as well. So, all right. And then finally, and I started this on the last meeting. I'm going to continue this for future meetings, in taking this opportunity to highlight some of the disturbing trends that I see impacting boys in our in education. I'll call it the boy crisis, if you will. And I want to pick up where I left. I'm only doing small snippets of different articles because I know people lose track after if you talk too long. But this is actually from an October 1st a newspaper article of this year entitled "Why American Boys Are Failing at School." And to just simply recap very quickly what I read last week, 60% of students on campus, on college campuses today are women. Girls account for 2 out of 3 high schoolers in the top 10% of their class, compared to boys being 1 out of 3. And that 23% of boys are being categorized today as having, I can't read my writing, disabilities. Well, I can't read the word before it, but disabilities. So let me pick up and just read just 2 quick paragraphs that puts these paragraphs in context with this data. To reverse this trend, we need schools to be more male-friendly. Boys should be allowed to and encouraged to start school a year later than girls, since male brains develop a little later than female ones on average, especially in adolescence. We also need a national recruitment drive for male teachers. Boys do better in schools with more men at the front of the classroom, especially in subjects like English. But men account for a shrinking share of the teaching profession, just 24%, down from 33% in the 1980s. In elementary schools, only 11% are men. And in the earliest years, men are virtually invisible. Just 3% of kindergarten teachers are men, which is about half the share of women flying military airplanes. I'm not sure how that's related to this article, but all right. Men, our schools need you. So those are my 2 paragraphs for tonight, and I'll continue with this on the next board meeting summary that I have. So that is it for my report this evening, and that takes us to agenda item 17, advanced planning. Next board meeting is on November 3rd, 2022. You have your 12-month calendar there for you to see important dates. And then we're on to suggested future agenda items. So let me start with the students. Any suggested future items? Board Member Hui?
Just want to maybe make a recommendation. We have another data report in February, it looks like.
Yes.
I don't know, it seems to be something separate, so I'm not sure if it's necessarily a future agenda item, but I really would love to hear some information around our rationale for the amount of social workers we have, as well as are there any funding sources we could utilize to hire more, if that is a need. So if maybe that could be part of that presentation, that would be helpful.
All right, Board Member Short.
Just to reiterate what I said, if we can get that information for parents and what available resources are to help the kids and that money it's coming down the pipe, other than just what we're doing. So I think that'd be great.
So as an agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be important. The learning loss.
Yep.
Yep, we're all aboard? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right,
That's-
I think there's a consensus on that.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, Board Member Clark.
All right. No, I see the things that I wanted on there, especially with Project 1300 with Improve Your Tomorrow, and also the BCLC presentation. So thank you.
All right, Board Member Hoover. Nope. All right. The one thing that I would like to at the least have a conversation, whether we actually change board policy or not, I would like the district or the board to consider amending a board policy. I'm not sure exactly which policy it would be, but to establish that our minimum wage for our employees would be $2 above the state minimum wage. And have it automatic, not something that we, the board has to approve increases from time to time, but establish that FCUSD's minimum wage for our lowest salaried, not salaried, but hourly wage employees would be $2 above minimum wage. Minimum wage does adjust under the new construct annually based on inflation. I would like to see that we keep up with that, and that's an expectation that staff is focusing on because it's incorporated into board policy. And that way we don't have any surprises or we don't forget to adjust or the like. So I would love to at least have that conversation and then see if there's an interest or hear the staff's perspective, if maybe there's a reason why the staff would not want that. But I would like to add that to a future agenda item.
I'd be open to that and maybe even see what it would look like at $2, if not a percentage over, rather than, in 10 years of minimum wage is a bit more.
Sure.
Well, let's keep up with that percentage.
Sure.
I mean, I'm all for it, but wouldn't we have to daylight? Will we have to daylight that as far as?
It's a board policy.
Well, it's compensation. So compensation is negotiated for the bargaining units. However, the current wage that's tied to the minimum wage is our yard duty, and they're not represented. So for yard duty, we wouldn't have to, but for CSEA, we would.
Yeah, it would have to be bargained.
Yes.
A board policy would have to be bargained.
The impacts and effects of the board policy.
Yeah, that's.
So the board could make that policy,
About that.
then we'd bargain the impacts and effects of that policy.
I can't believe they would say no, but sure, okay.
I mean, I was just wondering if that had to be daylight.
All right, so agreed? Or
Yeah.
Any concerns? Okay, all right. So we have a
I don't
consent.
trust the state, but
All right, well. All right, so that finishes the advanced planning. Now, we do have to adjourn back into closed session or recess to closed session because we did not finish all of our work before, in closed session before the 6 p.m. start time of public session. So we will adjourn. For those who hypothetically want to stay, I don't know, gosh, I think we're going to be in there probably at least a half hour, if not longer. But I would anticipate the only thing when we come out of closed session that we will be doing is approving agenda item J on the consent calendar, and that's it. So you're probably not going to miss anything if you were to leave. But all right, so we are adjourned to, or not adjourned, recessed to closed session. All right, welcome back from our second closed session. Superintendent, reporting out?
Yes, we have one item to be voting on in open session, but no other action was taken in closed session.
Okay, the item was the item from agenda consent, which was agenda item 10J, approve routine personnel action items. Is there a motion to approve that?
I'll move it.
second.
All right, motion by Mr. Clark, seconded by Mr. Hoover. Superintendent, take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hoover?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Short?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
All right, if there's no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting by unanimous consent. Is there an objection?
Nope.
All right, we're adjourned.